series of homicides started, and we were finding a body. It averaged out about every 2 weeks. You know, if you don't solve it soon, someone else is going to die. Trilobal nylon carpet fiber.
Oh, he's an absolute sicko. He's an arrogant son of a bitch. He was an arrogant guy. He used to go, his big start was in rapes. He would answer ads where the parents were trying to sell the baby furniture. So he would go to the house hoping to find the little girl or the young mommy there.
Florida's most horrifying, bloodthirsty serial killer is prowling through the pitch-black night, hunting for his 11th victim. It's 2 a.m. when he viciously snatches 17-year-old Lisa McVey right off her bicycle. He presses a cold gun to her left temple, brutally blindfolds her, completely convinced he just snagged another helpless, broken prey to slaughter, just like the 10 chilling cases before her. But the terrifying truth is, little did he know, he had just dug his own grave. This tiny girl, with her eyes bound in total darkness, wasn't just going to survive that horrifying lair, she was going to turn herself into the ultimate weapon to destroy him. What do you guys think? What would you do if the very person trying to kill you became the exact reason you fought like hell to live? The chilling reality finally came to light when a deafening knock shattered the dead of night at a Florida apartment complex. SWAT teams swarmed in and slapped the cuffs on an aggressively normal-looking guy named Bobby Joe Long. He didn't fight back. His face was just completely cold and blank. But hiding behind that painfully average mask, he wasn't just some petty criminal. He was a pure monster in human skin, a bloodthirsty serial killer who had already brutally slaughtered 10 innocent women. I gotta be honest with you guys. When diving into the files of this case, the absolute dead end the cops were facing genuinely haunts me. For months on end, an entire massive force of Tampa police, backed up by some of the most seasoned profilers the FBI had to offer, were completely trapped in a nightmare maze. Every couple of weeks, they'd find another body, women dumped along the desolate highway, strangled, and viciously tortured. And what did the cops actually have? Almost nothing.
This guy, he knew what he was doing. He had me. I could have been dead. I could have been lying down in some ditch or somewhere.
Just a few chilling red nylon carpet fibers left on the victims, and a city absolutely paralyzed by fear. This guy was too careful. He was like a ghost, prowling through the night, hunting his prey, dumping them, and vanishing into thin air without leaving a single trace behind. The entire justice system was completely helpless. But what no one knew was, the death grip of this horrifying killing spree wasn't going to be broken by state-of-the-art forensics or brilliant FBI minds. The whole case was blown wide open by a 17-year-old kid. And this is the craziest part, the detail that makes this case an absolute legend. For the entire 26 hours she was held captive in a living hell, stripped of her clothes and subjected to brutal torture. That girl was 100% blindfolded, complete, pitch-black darkness.
Off my bike by God knows who, and I felt the cold steel barrel to the left side of my temple.
What struck me the most was her chilling, goosebump-inducing composure. I mean, you know, just close your eyes for a second and try to imagine it. You are entirely stripped of your sight. Surrounding you is nothing but the freezing scent of pure evil, the heavy breathing of a serial killer, and the literal Grim Reaper holding a blade to your throat. 99% of us would be screaming, panicking, or completely paralyzed by fear. But not Lisa McVey. The brain of this 17-year-old girl triggered an unbelievable survival mechanism, turning her into a superhuman evidence-gathering machine right in the middle of that blinding darkness. The reality is, the devil finally had to bow down to a temporarily blinded victim. He thought he had just snagged a weak, easily broken prey. The horrifying truth is, he had just dragged a genius detective right into his own lair. But the question that left every veteran investigator absolutely speechless is how. How does a 17-year-old girl, who couldn't see a damn thing, accurately recall the dimly lit word, Magnum, on a car dashboard, the rough, scratchy texture of a blood-red carpet beneath her bare feet, and every single rugged contour and mustache hair on her attacker's face, to decode this phenomenal warrior mindset? This is where the story takes a dark turn. We have to rewind the clock and go back to that exact, terrifying night. The night where the line between life and death was hanging by a literal thread. Let's really set the scene here. It's 2 a.m. on a chillingly quiet November night in Tampa, Florida. The streets are completely deserted, pitch black, and dead silent, the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that just makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand straight up. 17-year-old Lisa McVey has just finished a grueling double shift at a local donut shop. She hops on her bicycle and starts pedaling into the dark, completely alone. Now, normally, when we hear a true crime story about a young girl biking home in the middle of the night, we assume she is desperately rushing to get to the safety of her house. But what no one knew was, Lisa wasn't rushing towards safety at all. She was actually pedaling toward her own tragic end. Tucked away in her pocket, feeling heavier with every single pedal stroke, was a suicide note she had carefully written out earlier that day.
One bad situation got me to another bad situation, to what saved my life, because the night before I'm doing my suicide note, and the next night I'm fighting for my life.
I gotta be honest with you guys. This part of her backstory just completely shatters my heart. For years, this poor girl had been trapped in a literal living nightmare inside her own home. She had been subjected to horrific, unrelenting torment by her own grandmother's boyfriend.
And put the gun to my left temple, and I yelled out and said, God, whatever you do, just don't kill me. I'll do whatever you want.
Lisa Nolan says the night Long abducted her, she planned to kill herself.
A man who lived under her roof would repeatedly hold a loaded gun to her head while he assaulted her. She was only 17, you know. But her spirit was completely broken. She had made up her mind that tonight was the night she was going to take her own life. She just wanted the agonizing pain to finally stop. As she rides through the empty streets, maybe even feeling a weird, tragic sense of peace about her decision, she notices a strange maroon car parked mysteriously near a dark church. She tries to shrug it off. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Out of the absolute blackness, a massive shadow lunges at her. In a fraction of a second, she is violently yanked off her bicycle. The impact is brutal, knocking the air entirely out of her lungs as her belongings scatter across the cold pavement. Before she can even process the shock, a rough hand grabs her, and she feels the freezing, metallic barrel of a gun jammed forcefully into her left temple. The attacker aggressively whispers that if she makes a sound, he will blow her brains out. But here is the most mind-blowing, chilling paradox of this entire case. Just 5 minutes ago, this young girl was fully prepared to take her own life. She wanted to die, but the exact second she feels the cold steel of a stranger's gun against her skin, the second she realizes this monstrous predator is trying to steal her life from her, something deep, primal, and incredibly powerful snaps inside her brain. A fierce, roaring will to live violently kicks in. She realizes, no, I don't want to die like this. You do not get to take my life. In the face of pure evil, her suicidal thoughts instantly evaporate, replaced by the ultimate warrior's instinct to survive at absolutely any cost. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you guys think you would do in that exact split second? Would that primal survival instinct kick in for you, or would the sheer terror freeze you completely? Let me know down below. The sheer terror escalates the second she is violently shoved into the passenger seat of his car. Her wrists and ankles are tightly bound with ligatures, her clothes stripped and tossed carelessly at her feet. She is completely blindfolded, shoved into a terrifying, pitch-black world where her only reality is the roaring engine of the car and the aggressive threats of a madman. He speeds off into the night, eventually dragging her into a strange, unfamiliar apartment that smells faintly of paint. He throws her onto a bed, and the absolute nightmare officially begins.
Next 26 hours, I was brutally raped by this monster. And I'm going to put it out there. It's not molestation, it's not sexual assault. It is rape. I endured that for 26 hours.
For the next 26 agonizing hours, Lisa McVey is trapped in the literal lair of the devil. She is held captive by a monster who subjects her to unimaginably brutal and painful violations, constantly reminding her that her life is entirely in his hands.
Lost count how many times he raped me throughout the night.
What struck me the most was how this 17-year-old girl handled the absolute peak of human terror. If you or I were in that room, the natural instinct would be to scream, to kick, to fight back with everything we have, or to just break down crying uncontrollably. But Lisa, she does the exact opposite. She doesn't scream. She doesn't physically fight him. She realizes with chilling clarity that panicking is a death sentence. One wrong move, one loud scream, and he would pull that trigger without a second thought.
He mentioned that he had raped other women, and not that it made it okay. And I said, why are you doing this to me? He goes, because just to get back at women in general. I said, I'll be your girlfriend.
Nolan says that saved her life.
It really helped me survive that attack, to use it psychologically to get inside his head and get to actually try to get him to see that I was a compassionate person.
Instead, she taps into a deeply heartbreaking coping mechanism. Because of the years of severe, horrifying torment she had already endured back at her grandmother's house, her brain knew exactly how to detach itself from her physical body. When the pain and the horror became too much, Lisa later said she would just mentally go far, far away. She would picture herself sitting in a bright, peaceful field of flowers. She completely disconnected from the brutal reality of that bedroom, allowing her body to become entirely numb to survive the unspeakable trauma. I gotta be honest with you guys, it is incredibly devastating that a child ever had to learn how to dissociate like that just to survive her own family. But in this exact, terrifying scenario, that tragic trauma response is exactly what kept her breathing.
I would lie to him to appease him, to keep him calm and coddle him.
You see, Bobby Joe Long was a sadistic serial killer. He was completely used to his victims fighting, screaming, and begging for their lives. He fed off their fear. Lisa's eerie, dead silent compliance completely threw him off his twisted game.
A lot of lives just gone right down the tubes because of me. You know, in one way or another. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a pleasant feeling. I'm not proud of anything I've done. And the worst thing is I don't understand why. I don't understand why.
But what no one knew was, while her body was enduring pure hell, her mind was not shut off at all. Behind that blindfold, her brain was running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She wasn't just surviving, she was actively observing, calculating, and preparing to turn the tables on a seasoned serial killer.
It was pretty easy to tell from the very minute I grabbed McVey that she wasn't like the others.
While her body was entirely numb to the horror, her brain was quietly executing an absolute masterclass in survival and psychological warfare. This is where the story takes a dark turn, into something that feels like it's straight out of a Hollywood thriller movie. Except this is 100% real life. Lisa McVey knew that simply enduring the physical trauma wasn't going to be enough. If she was going to make it out of that apartment alive, or at the very least, make sure this monster finally got caught, she had to play his sick, twisted game and actually beat him at it. First, she knew she had to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for the cops. Earlier, while she was still tied up in his car, she had secretly and deliberately left a personal hygiene item, a tampon, hidden on the floorboard. She wanted her DNA firmly planted in his vehicle, but she needed to do more.
I had to remain calm. I couldn't find him. I was much smaller than he was. So then I had to start putting clues together. Anything I saw, smelled, touched, taste, I had to remember it to save my life.
While trapped in his bedroom, she suddenly demands to use the bathroom. When the killer immediately refuses, she doesn't cower or back down. Instead, she boldly threatens him, telling him that if he doesn't let her go, she is going to relieve herself right then, and they're all over his bed. It was a massive, terrifying risk, but it worked. He reluctantly lets her step into the bathroom alone for just a brief moment. And what does she do the second that door closes? She doesn't break down crying. She doesn't frantically look for a tiny window to squeeze out of. Instead, she presses her fingertips as hard as she physically can all over the vanity mirror, the glass, the sink, the tiles, and the walls. She is literally planning her own crime scene evidence in real time. She wanted to scream to the police from the shadows, "I was here. I am one of his victims. Do not let him get away with this." I gotta be honest with you guys, this level of pure, calculated presence of mind from a terrified, tormented teenager is just completely beyond normal human comprehension. Most fully trained adults wouldn't even have the mental capacity to think of half of this while staring down the barrel of a gun.
He was getting back at women in general because of a bad breakup.
But Lisa didn't just stop at planting physical evidence. She went straight for his brain. Back in the bedroom, she starts softly talking to him. She gently asks, "Why are you doing this to me?" He grumbles something about a recent, bitter breakup, and how he's basically just taking his raging anger out on women in general. The exact second she hears that Lisa flips the script, she completely strokes his fragile, serial killer ego. She softens her tone, pretending to deeply empathize with his pain. She tells him he actually seems like a really nice guy. She looks at her kidnapper and offers to be his secret girlfriend, whispering, "We don't have to tell anybody how we met. I can just stay right here and take care of you."
I said, "Why are you doing this to me?" He goes, "Because just to get back at women in general." I said, "I'll be your girlfriend."
She actively morphed into exactly what his twisted psychology desperately craved. She swallowed her own pride and fear to make him feel like he had total control and was actually desired. And the absolute craziest part, it worked. The bloodthirsty monster actually softens, treating her gently, almost like a real partner. Am I the only one who finds this level of psychological manipulation from a 17-year-old absolutely chilling? She literally reverse engineered a serial killer's mind to save her own life. The psychological warfare Lisa McVey unleashed on Bobby Joe Long didn't just work, it completely shattered his typical serial killer routine. After 26 agonizing hours of pure terror, the chilling reality finally came to light for Bobby. He didn't want to kill her anymore. Lisa had woven this incredibly complex, heartbreaking lie, telling him that her father was severely sick and that she was the absolute only person in the world who could take care of him. If she didn't go home, she cried, her father would literally die, and somehow, this bloodthirsty monster, a man who had already brutally strangled and slaughtered 10 other women, without a second thought, actually felt a twisted sense of sympathy. At 3:30 in the morning, he suddenly sits up and tells her, "I can't keep you." He orders her to get dressed. But what no one knew was, this final car ride wasn't just a terrified girl praying to get home. It was the birth of the ultimate witness.
He ties me up, my ankles, my wrists, and now he's gonna blindfold me. There's some way I've got to see beneath his blindfold. You take your jaw, tighten your jaw, real tight. Muscles, right? They contract, they expand. Just like if you put a string around your fists and you let go, it's loose. It allowed my blindfold to get loose enough so I could see beneath my blindfold.
When Bobby goes to tie the blindfold tightly around her head for the drive back, Lisa executes a move so brilliant it gives me actual goosebumps. She deliberately clenches her jaw and flexes every single muscle in her face as hard as she physically can. She makes her head as wide as possible while he knots the fabric. The second he finishes and steps away, she completely relaxes her face. Instantly, the blindfold droops, leaving a tiny, crucial gap of vision right at the bottom.
The fluorescent lights on the interstate, they were shining through my blindfold. You could see it. I could hear the ticking of the car needed like a tune-up. I could see green lighting from the clock on the dashboard. Anything I saw, I related to something I already knew, and I just compartmentalized it so I could remember it.
For the entire ride, she transforms herself into a living, breathing recording device. She isn't crying, she is locking every single detail into her memory bank. She listens to the engine, it's knocking loudly, desperately needing a tune-up. She feels the distinct change in the air pressure and wind speed, knowing instantly they've merged onto the interstate.
After 24 hours from hell, incredibly, he let her go. On the ride home, she peeked beneath a blindfold, finding the evidence that would catch a killer, the word Magnum on the dash, and a red carpet interior.
Looking down through that tiny gap, she spots the thick, unusual red carpet beneath her feet. And then, the ultimate clue, a silver, piercing light illuminating a specific word on the dashboard: Magnum. She didn't stop there. As he drove, she mentally mapped their route, noting the exact intersection where they exited, spotting 2 distinct hotels at Hillsborough Avenue. She was practically drawing a map for the police right inside her head. Finally, the car lurches to a halt in a dark, empty parking lot. Bobby orders her out of the vehicle and gives her a terrifying final command: "Stay right here for 5 minutes." Lisa stands completely frozen on the cold pavement. Her heart is hammering against her ribs. "I gotta be honest with you. Can you imagine the absolute terror of those 5 minutes? She's standing there blindfolded, terrified that he's just sitting in the car, pointing a gun right at her back, or that he's going to floor the gas pedal and run her over. The seconds drag on like hours. Finally, the loud knocking engine roars and fades into the distance. He actually left. Trembling, Lisa rips the blindfold off. The very first thing she sees in the dim light is a massive, beautiful oak tree. She immediately drops to her knees and starts sobbing uncontrollably. In her mind, that tree wasn't just wood and leaves, it was the symbol of a brand new branch of life. She had survived the devil. And then everything changed when she finally sprinted through the dark streets and burst through the front door of her grandmother's house, desperately seeking safety, only to walk right back into another living nightmare. So, Lisa sprints through the pitch-black streets, her lungs burning, until she finally bursts through the front door of her grandmother's house. After surviving 26 hours of absolute, unimaginable hell, you would think this is the moment she finally gets to collapse into the arms of a loving family, right? This is where the story takes a dark turn, because you have to remember who is inside that house. She walks in, tears streaming down her face, and tells her grandmother and her grandmother's abusive boyfriend everything she had just endured. And what do? They don't hug her. They don't immediately call the cops to protect her. Instead, the boyfriend actually physically beats her. They scream at her, accusing her of being a liar and making the entire horrific story up just to get attention. She had just escaped a literal serial killer, only to walk right back into the very nightmare she originally wanted to escape. But Lisa doesn't give up. She eventually makes it to the local police station. She sits down in that interrogation room and starts laying out her story. She gives them a flawlessly detailed, chronological account of her abduction. She describes the layout of the apartment, the smell of the paint, the exact texture of his face, the dashboard of his car. And how do the seasoned detectives react? They look at her and basically tell her they don't buy it. They literally thought she was lying because she was too calm. They expected a hysterical, broken, weeping mess. Because Lisa had used her brilliant coping mechanisms to stay sharp and composed, they thought she was making it all up. I gotta be honest with you guys, the absolute audacity of these adults to gaslight a 17-year-old survivor just because she processed trauma differently makes my blood boil. Does this seem weird to you that the system almost failed her just because she didn't act like a typical victim? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this part is just so infuriating to me. And then everything changed when one specific veteran detective took over the case. He walks into the room, sits down, and instead of treating her like a suspect, he pulls out his wallet. He shows Lisa a picture of his own teenage daughter and looks her dead in the eye, saying, "She is exactly your age. There is nothing I wouldn't do to protect her, and I am going to protect you." Hearing those words of genuine safety for the first time in her entire life, Lisa's tough exterior finally shatters. She breaks down crying. She starts rattling off the clues she collected behind the blindfold. She mentions the word Magnum on the dashboard. And then, she mentions the thick, weirdly specific red carpet on the floorboards. The detective's blood instantly runs cold. That red carpet wasn't just a random detail. It was a 100% exact match to the microscopic red fibers they had been finding on the brutally murdered bodies of 10 women dumped all over the Tampa Bay area. Lisa McVey hadn't just survived a random kidnapping. She had just handed the police the exact blueprint to catch the most notorious, elusive serial killer in Florida. Armed with the incredibly specific breadcrumbs, Lisa had meticulously gathered the red carpet, the Dodge Magnum, the exact physical features. The police launched a massive manhunt. Within days, they tracked down the vehicle and pulled over a 31-year-old man named Bobby Joe Long. But to seal the deal, they needed Lisa to pick him out of a police lineup. Keep in mind, this girl was blindfolded for almost the entire 26 hours she was held captive. But because she had brilliantly mapped out his face with her own hands, while pretending to caress him, she didn't even hesitate. She confidently pointed right at him. Game over. Bobby Joe Long was arrested, eventually confessed to the brutal murders of 10 women, and was sentenced to death. He finally took his last breath on death row in 2019, while Lisa sat in the viewing room, watching the monster who tried to break her finally face ultimate justice. Let's just take a step back and look at the absolute sheer magnitude of this journey. On November 3, 1984, Lisa McVey was a broken, severely tormented 17-year-old girl pedaling her bike into the darkness with a suicide note tucked in her pocket. She was fully prepared to leave this earth, because she thought she had zero worth and absolutely no way out of her living nightmare. I love this so much. She completely flipped the script on destiny. She absolutely refused to let the horrific trauma of her childhood or those 26 hours in a serial killer's hell define her as a permanent victim. Instead, she took all of that darkness, all of that pain, and forged it into an unbreakable armor. Lisa immediately moved out of that toxic, abusive house. She put herself through school, and she did the most incredibly badass thing imaginable. She went into law enforcement. And she didn't just go anywhere. Lisa McVey became a sworn deputy at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the exact same police department that originally handled her case and brought her attacker to justice. She dedicated her entire life to becoming a literal guardian angel for traumatized children and vulnerable women. She made absolutely sure that no victim would ever have to feel as helpless, dismissed, and ignored as she did when she first walked into that station. She stepped up to be the fierce, unyielding voice for the 10 women Bobby Joe Long silenced forever. She looked pure evil right in the face and said, "Not today." What do you guys think really gave Lisa the ultimate edge over a seasoned serial killer? Was it the tragic trauma of her past that uniquely prepared her to survive? Or was it just her pure, quick-thinking logic? I gotta be honest. I'll keep you posted if I find anything new. Thanks so much for watching and for all your comments. Appreciate you guys.